Have you ever wondered why God keeps removing people you begged him to let you keep? The ones you prayed for, cried for, fought for, and still somehow they slipped away. It didn't make sense, did it? You thought they were blessings, answers, maybe even soulmates. But heaven saw something your heart couldn't, and that's why God stepped in, not to break you, but to protect you. Because sometimes what you call loss is actually spiritual surgery. God cuts what you won't release. He ends what you keep trying to resurrect. And the reason it hurts so deeply is because your heart still believes that anything familiar must be meant to stay. But God doesn't protect your comfort, He protects your calling. You saw their potential, but He saw their intentions. You saw connection, but He saw contamination. You saw peace, but He saw danger. And before that presence could drain your purpose, He removed it, abruptly, painfully, perfectly, because His mercy doesn't always come as an embrace. Sometimes it comes as a separation. It's hard to understand when you're still holding on. You replay every memory, every what if, every word they said. You think, maybe I could have fixed it, but what if it was never broken? What if it was completed? What if God wasn't taking them away from you, but taking you away from what would have destroyed you slowly? He saw conversations you never heard. He saw thoughts you were never meant to know. He saw the pride, the jealousy, the lies whispered in shadows. And He said, "Not this one." So He cut the tie you were too attached to sever, and one day when you're healed, you'll understand. The people God removes are not punishment, they're prophecy. He's not cutting you off from love. He's cutting you free from limitation, and what feels like rejection today will soon reveal itself as redirection. Before we continue, make sure you're subscribed to the channel, because what's coming next might finally make sense of everything you've lost. If this already spoke to you, like this video and tell me in the comments, who do you think God removed to protect your peace? God's cuts are never careless. They are precise, intentional, and always rooted in love. But that doesn't mean they don't hurt. In fact, the most painful moments in your life are often the ones that save you the most. Because the truth is, divine separation always comes before spiritual elevation. You thought you were being punished, but you were being purified. You were asking God to bless the very thing He was trying to remove. You were clinging to a person who was never meant to go where He's taking you. And because He loves you too deeply to let you stay small, He had to pull you away, even if it felt like your heart was being torn in two. Sometimes God cuts what you won't cut yourself. He sees the relationships you justify, the patterns you excuse, the loyalty you keep giving to people who only drain you. And when He realizes you won't walk away on your own, He closes the door Himself, not out of anger, but out of mercy. You called it loss, He called it liberation. Because if He hadn't removed them, you would have kept shrinking to fit spaces that were too small for your growth. You would have kept fighting to be understood by people who were never assigned to understand you. God's cuts are not cruel. They are careful. He cuts so that you can breathe again. He separates so that you can see clearly. He removes what blocks your path so that purpose can finally flow freely through you. It's the kind of pain that heals, the kind of heartbreak that rebuilds. Every divine removal is also a divine replacement. He never takes without the intention to restore, But he will never allow you to carry yesterday's weight into tomorrow's assignment. He will make it hurt, just enough to let you release what was already fading. So yes, the cut is painful, but the peace that comes afterward, that's how you'll know it was God. Because real love doesn't keep. You bound, it sets you free. And if freedom followed the loss, then it wasn't rejection, it was redemption. You only saw what was shown to you. The smiles, the promises, the surface. But God saw the moments you never witnessed. The words said when your name left the room, the thoughts that didn't match the actions, the private intentions hidden behind public affection. He saw everything. You were moved by emotion, but he was moved by protection. He looked deeper than your heart could, past the charm. Past the connection, past the chemistry, and he saw the cracks, the subtle manipulation, the quiet envy, the unspoken selfishness, the things that would have eventually broken you piece by piece. So he stepped in before the damage could reach your spirit. You called it timing, he called it truth, because while you were busy holding on to potential, he was revealing character. You prayed for signs and they came, through distance, through confusion, through silence, but love blinded you from seeing them for what they were. So God did what only he could do. He exposed what was hidden by removing what you couldn't release. Every unanswered message, every awkward silence, every sudden shift was divine evidence. It wasn't coincidence, it was clarity, because God doesn't allow people to stay where deception lives. He loves you too much to let your peace be poisoned by what your emotions still defend. He heard the words you weren't meant to hear. He saw the conversations you were never supposed to find. He saw how quickly loyalty could turn into competition, how admiration could hide envy. And before that truth could crush you, he carried you away from it. You were praying, Lord, make them stay. But heaven was whispering, I'm saving you from what you can't see. That's why the distance came suddenly. Because if you had known the full truth, it would have shattered you. So instead, God let them fade quietly, leaving room for healing instead of bitterness. One day, you'll realize you didn't lose someone who loved you. You lost someone who was about to lie to you. And that's not rejection. That's rescue. It never feels like protection when it's happening. When God removes someone you love, it feels unfair, almost cruel. You pray for understanding, but all you feel is silence and emptiness. You question everything. If this was love, why would God take it away? But that's the mystery of mercy. Sometimes it looks like heartbreak. God's protection rarely comes wrapped in comfort. It often arrives through confusion, because if you understood what he was saving you from, the pain would disappear instantly. But since you can't see the danger, you only feel the distance. You see the absence. He sees the aftermath. He knows that if he let certain people stay, their words would have started shaping your identity more than his voice. Their presence would have become your peace, until it wasn't. Their approval would have become your worth, until it faded. And the version of you that he's trying to grow would have slowly started shrinking to fit their expectations. So when he cuts, it's not to wound, it's to warn. It's to remind you that love without alignment always leads to loss. It's to protect your purpose from being buried under someone else's potential. And yes, it hurts, because you were attached to the idea of what could have been. But God saw what it would have become. He heard the conversations you didn't. He saw the pride that would have turned into pain. He noticed the small cracks that would have grown into collapse. So before your heart could make a home where it was never meant to stay, he intervened. And the truth is, sometimes his love feels like cruelty because it cuts before it explains. But that cut, that moment when everything fell apart, was the exact moment heaven was rebuilding you. It was never rejection, it was protection wrapped in pain. You'll understand one day that what you called cruel was actually kindness. Because when God removes, he restores. When he cuts, he heals. And when he takes, it's only to give you something safer. If this message spoke to your heart, write in the comments, "God saw what I couldn't see." Sometimes God doesn't just remove people. He removes what those people awakened in you, because not every attachment was love. Some were lessons. And while you've been focusing on who left, God has been focused on what needed to leave with them. He's not only clearing your surroundings, he's cleansing your spirit. You see, the separation wasn't just external, it was internal. God saw how that relationship stirred old insecurities, how it fed hidden fears, how it kept you depending on approval instead of identity. You were starting to confuse being needed with being valued and attention with affection. So he intervened, not just to change your circle, but to change your center. He's cleaning the wounds that connection reopened, the need to be chosen, the fear of being left. The habit of overgiving to people who never intended to stay. Every cut he made on the outside was meant to heal something on the inside. That's why it's been quiet. That's why your heart feels both heavy and hollow. Because he's detoxing you. Spiritually, emotionally, even mentally. He's removing the residue of conversations that shaped how you saw yourself. He's cleansing the echoes of manipulation that made you believe love must always hurt to be real. And though you miss them, deep down, you know this. The distance has brought a strange peace. It's not loud, it's not easy, but it's pure. Because what left wasn't just a person. It was a pattern, and the silence that followed was God saying, "Now I can reach you again." You can't step into new relationships with old definitions of love, so God strips away what contaminated your heart, not to leave you empty, but to make room for something sacred. He's teaching you to love from wholeness, not from hunger, to stay even when others go, to value yourself not by who stays beside you, but by who God says you are. So when you feel the emptiness, don't rush to fill it. Let him finish the cleansing, because the emptiness you feel today is just space being made for peace tomorrow. Growth always requires separation. The moment God begins to elevate you, he starts pruning, not to punish you, but to prepare you. Because the higher he takes you, the fewer people can go with you. And that's not cruelty, it's capacity. Not everyone is equipped for the next level of your calling. You've probably noticed it, the distance, the silence, the fading of certain connections that once felt unbreakable. You didn't do anything wrong. You simply outgrew environments that could no longer hold your spirit. God saw it before you did, and he began to cut. Not because he wanted to isolate you, but because he wanted to elevate you. Growth exposes misalignment. What once felt like comfort now feels like constraint. Conversations that used to inspire you now drain you. The places where you once fit now feel too small. That's what divine pruning feels like. Uncomfortable, but necessary, because God can't build your future on foundations that were meant only for your past. He knows that if he doesn't separate you now, you'll keep seeking validation in circles that no longer understand your vision. So, he disrupts it. He allows tension, distance, even misunderstanding, all to push you closer to dependence on him and not on people. When you start losing what doesn't grow with you, that's not rejection. That's proof that your spirit is maturing. You're learning to live without needing to be constantly understood or accepted. You're beginning to realize that peace is better than popularity, and purpose is better than belonging. God cuts to make room for clarity. He prunes what's fruitless so the fruitful can flourish. And yes, it's painful because you're attached to the familiar, but comfort is the enemy of calling. And you can't move forward while clinging to what was only meant to start your story, not stay in it. So if you feel people falling away, don't chase them. Bless them and release them. Because if they were meant to go with you, the elevation wouldn't have separated you. The distance is not a sign that you've lost, it's a sign that you've grown. Not everyone who enters your life is meant to stay forever. Some are assignments, not attachments. Some are lessons wrapped in affection, and others are confirmations disguised as loss. They arrive with purpose, they leave with meaning, and in between, they shape parts of you that permanence never could. But the problem is, we confuse temporary with eternal. We build futures around people who were only meant to help us heal the past. We hold on to hands that were never meant to walk with us beyond a season. And when God begins to remove them, we call it heartbreak. But heaven calls it transition. Every person carries a timing and a reason. Some come to teach you what love should feel like. Others come to show you what it should never cost, and when their purpose is fulfilled, their presence starts to fade. It's not betrayal, it's completion. The story didn't end wrong, it ended right on schedule. You see, divine relationships are not measured by duration, but by transformation. God doesn't count the years, He counts the growth. If their presence made you wiser, stronger, more dependent on Him, then their departure didn't destroy you. It delivered you. Because not all endings are failures, some are fulfillments. You may not have realized it, but those temporary people were mirrors. They reflected what needed healing, what needed release, and what needed restoration. They stirred pain that revealed patterns, and through that God began His deeper work in you. Their absence wasn't punishment, it was preparation. So stop mourning people who were never meant to stay. Thank God for the role they played, and release them with peace. Because trying to keep what was meant to leave will only keep you from receiving what's meant to come. And when the right people arrive, those who are rooted, mature, and aligned with your purpose, you'll understand why everyone else had to go first. If this spoke to you, write in the comments, I trust God's separation. After God removes people from your life, the silence that follows can feel heavier than the loss itself. The noise is gone. No more calls, no more messages, no more presence. And suddenly you're left with quiet. But this silence isn't punishment, it's purification. It's the space where God begins to rebuild everything that connection once clouded. When you're surrounded by too many voices, it's hard to hear His. So He allows the volume of your world to lower until His whisper becomes clear again. That's why the silence feels uncomfortable, because you've been used to noise for so long that peace feels foreign. But this quiet is not emptiness, it's your cleansing. It's heaven disinfecting the parts of your heart that were infected by dependence. In this silence, God starts showing you what you couldn't see before. He reveals the patterns that kept repeating, the pieces of yourself you kept hiding just to be accepted, the exhaustion of giving more than you ever received. He lets you sit in stillness until you finally see that being alone with Him isn't loneliness, it's alignment. The silence after the cut is sacred ground. It's where your spirit detoxes from emotional chaos. It's where your identity stops being shaped by who left and starts being restored by who stayed, Him. And the more you learn to love this silence, the more you'll realize that it's not the absence of people that hurts. It's the absence of distraction that exposes the truth. This is where He strengthens your discernment. He teaches you how to recognize peace, how to feel when something is off, how to trust stillness instead of rushing into noise again. Because the next time someone enters your life, you'll know the difference between presence and purpose. So don't fight the silence. Embrace it. Because this quiet is where healing finishes its work. It's where God cleanses your circle and renews your spirit. And when He finally speaks again, you'll hear Him clearer than ever. Not because He got louder, but because everything else got quiet enough for you to listen. There will come a day when you'll look back and realize that what you called loss was actually God's loudest mercy. The tears you cried, the confusion you carried, the silence that once suffocated you, all of it was protection wearing disguise. Because God doesn't just save you from pain, He saves you from people who were quietly preparing it. You'll remember the nights you begged Him to make them stay, how you tried to convince yourself that things could still change, that maybe the story wasn't over. But when you look back from a healed heart, you'll see what His heart already knew. That if He hadn't removed them, you would have spent years trying to rebuild what was never meant to last. His no wasn't rejection, it was redirection toward peace. God saw the cracks before the collapse. He saw the patterns before they became prisons. And instead of letting you learn the hard way, He stepped in. He interrupted the cycle before it consumed you completely. The breakup, the betrayal, the distance, they were all instruments in His symphony of protection. You thought you were losing something precious. But what you were really losing was what was poisoning you slowly. He cut it before it could corrupt you. He closed it before it could control you. And now, standing where you are, you can finally see it. You didn't lose peace. You found it. That's how you know it was God. Because the farther you get from what hurt you, the closer you feel to Him. The anxiety fades, the pressure lifts, and you start to feel free in ways you didn't even know you weren't. That's the proof of divine intervention. Peace where there used to be panic. So when understanding finally catches up to your pain, gratitude will replace grief. You'll stop asking, why did they leave? And start thanking God for why He made them go. Because He knew what you couldn't, that keeping them would have cost you yourself. The moment you realize it was all a rescue, not a rejection, that's when you'll understand how fiercely He's been protecting you all along. Now that you see it clearly, you understand. God never cut people to punish you. He did it to protect the version of you He's been building quietly beneath the pain. He wasn't being cruel when He separated you from what you loved. He was being careful with what He's preparing. Because not everyone can stay where peace is sacred, and not every connection deserves access to your calling. You thought the loss would destroy you, but it refined you. You learned how to stand without validation, how to breathe without their presence, how to trust God when you couldn't trust your emotions. That's what His pruning does. It hurts before it heals, but when it heals, it changes everything. You didn't lose the people you needed. You lost the distractions you couldn't see. You lost the weight that was quietly weakening your faith, and though it broke your heart, it also freed your spirit. Because every person God removed was a door He closed to protect your destiny. He saw what you couldn't: the conversations behind your back, the jealousy behind the smiles, the confusion behind the connection. And He said, "No more." He ended what you were trying to maintain because He loves you too much to let your purpose be contaminated by what pretended to care. Now, in this quiet after the storm, He's giving you clarity. He's teaching you that what He removes, He replaces, but only when your heart is ready. And what's coming next will carry peace, not pressure. You won't have to chase it, force it, or fear it. Because when it's from Him, it will stay, it will serve, and it will strengthen you. So breathe. Let go of what He already released. You don't need to understand every loss. You just need to trust that every cut was calculated with love. And one day, you'll thank Him for every goodbye that guided you closer to peace. If you made it to this part of the video, this message was for you. Check if you're subscribed to the channel, because here, every word is made to heal, restore, and remind you that God's protection is personal. Leave a comment saying, "Thank you, God, for removing who couldn't go with me." That's your declaration today, your way of saying, "I trust your cuts more than my cravings." And don't forget to like this video and watch the next one that's appearing on your screen. It continues this same journey of purpose, peace, and divine alignment. Because sometimes God's greatest gift isn't who He sends, it's who He takes away.